Hello, my name's Ben.
And my name's Josh.
Welcome back to FPL graduates. Welcome back to another video. In this video, we're rounding off the series with some forward picks. We're going to be going into some of those that we do like the look of going into next season. So without further ado, let's get straight into it.
Yeah, so rounding off the mini series, it should be a good one. We're starting off with Ollie Watkins, starting off strong at £9 million, obviously towards the more premium scale of the forwards. We're not going to be covering off Haaland, Isak in this video just because they sort of speak for themselves. Ollie Watkins does as well a little bit, to be honest. He's a very solid option. Obviously, there is a little bit of speculation around his future. He could maybe move, but the longer that obviously it goes on, I think it's less likely to happen unless a real big bid came in for him. Obviously, he scored more points than Erling Haaland in the last two seasons, so the value there is really good at 9 million. Not crazily high owned either at 14%. Ben, you're quite high on him this preseason, aren't you? So, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, he's looked really good in pre-season, scored in the last four pre-season games, which is good. Albeit it's not going to be at a high level as the Premier League. But we see the big chance involvement, 47. That's going to be the highest out of any striker that we'll see on this video, which just goes to show he is involved in absolutely everything going forwards. And even if, it's at points he gets taken off and doesn't get the full amount of minutes, he is still going to be a really good asset to own. So yeah, really hot on him. Aston Villa's fixtures look really decent as well for the first 8-9 game weeks. So definitely one that's currently in my team. Okay, so next up we're going to go for Arsenal new man Victor Jotarez at 9 million as well. I do think there is a case to be made to go for him because of the sheer number of goals that he scored last season for Sporting, and playing for a better team than Aston Villa in Arsenal. He interestingly started the pre-season game against Villarreal, which is interesting. He got 60 minutes and looked sort of fairly good. I do think there's an option to go with him. I think there's a bigger risk because I don't think that he's going to start every game towards the start of the season. But as we get through the season, his minutes will become more and more secure as he gets more and more bedded into the Arsenal style of play and how Arteta expects him to play. Josh, what's your thoughts on Victor Jokeres?
Yeah, I really like him. As soon as he got priced up, I thought he was underpriced at 9 million. Obviously, Kai Havertz has also picked up an injury in sort of pre-season. It doesn't seem too major, but I think it pushed me towards the thought that Jokeres probably does start game week one. Now he has 63 minutes. That was the same amount of minutes as Bukayo Saka. So, and we know that he's fit and ready to go. So for me, yeah, I'd be pretty happy picking him game week one right now that we saw him get those 60 minutes. I think they have one more friendly, if I'm not mistaken, before the game week one at the time of recording. So yeah, I think he's a really nice option. Obviously, he does give you captaincy ability in game week two if you wanted to go there. Obviously, Salah's fixture is a little bit more tricky. Same with Haaland as well. So, that's a prime fixture for captaincy if you wanted to go there. I think for me, would I go there game week one? Probably not. But if you wanted to get some Arsenal coverage in your team and didn't want to pay Bukayo Saka money, then I think he's a really nice option. Okay, then so next up is Jarrod Bowen. Obviously, he's had the position change from midfielder to forward this year in FPL. Last season, 13 goals, 11 assists. Massively overperforming his XG and XA, but it sort of just sums up where West Ham are really. Just Jarrod Bowen putting him on his back week in, week out, and I expect the same this year. Not too many new signings for West Ham, although the signings that they have made I've been quite impressed by so far in pre-season. Sunderland away on the opening day is a fantastic fixture from a West Ham attacking point of view. I think that's why we see Bowen at nearly 20% ownership right now. I would sort of caveat that though with obviously Chelsea and Forest the next 2 weeks. They are two of the best defences in the league. So if you are picking Jarrod Bowen, just be cautious that you could come away with those first 3 weeks if he doesn't return against Sunderland, potentially blanking in that Chelsea and Forest fixtures. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be talismanic throughout the season, obviously, but it is playing for West Ham, and I think you're right. After that sort of game week one fixture, you could see a lot of those 19.8% that own him currently drop off of him, move to other options with better fixtures. You look, if Bowen doesn't return in game week one and Jokeres does, all of a sudden everyone's moving Bowen to Jokeres for a hit, and yeah, you sort of don't want to be in that position. So for me, based on the overperformance and the tough, couple of fixtures within the first three, I'm probably not going to go there, but I don't necessarily think he's a bad option either. Okay, so next up, we're going to go to Nicholas Fulkrug, again from West Ham. Now, at 6 million, he lessens the risk, in my opinion, going for him, because, you can easily get to other alternatives at that price point, albeit there aren't too many. I do think he's going to get a lot more minutes this season compared to last season. And like I said, at the price point, there's not too much risk associated with that. Josh, what's your thoughts on Nicholas Fulkrug?
Yeah, he's currently in my Game Week 1 draft. At 6 million, like you say, the risk is a lot less. I am bench boosting Game Week 1 as well, so he's sort of one of those prime guys that I can use for Game Week 1 and then probably bench for those harder fixtures against Chelsea and Nottingham Forest. For me, he's looked really good in pre-season. I've watched a lot of the summer series due to Man United playing in it, and he's looked really, really nice. Obviously, picked up a couple of goals. Seems to be leading the line really well with Jared Bowen, and obviously that was the plan last year. He got injured. He looks fit. He looks sharp in pre-season, which is good to see. It wouldn't shock me to see him return against Sunderland in Game Week 1. Okay, then so next up we've got another 7.5 million forward, or the first one for this video, should I say. It is Xiao Pedro. Obviously, the fixtures are good for Chelsea to start off. We put him in our players to avoid video earlier in the pre-season, so if you haven't seen that, do check it out. The ownership has come down since then slightly at 52% now. But for me, he's still a big minutes risk. I think we'll see him start Game Week 1, but whether we see him start Game Week 2 and beyond that is going to be question marked. Obviously, a great Club World Cup, and I think that's why he is so highly owned. But Liam Delap hasn't just signed there to sit on the bench. He's definitely going to be providing some good competition for João Pedro. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, we even saw him get rotated in and out of the team at Brighton, and you'd associate Chelsea with a higher quality of player. So I do think you're still going to see elements of rotation there. So yeah, I don't think the minutes are at all guaranteed, and the 50% plus ownership is crazy. But if we avoid him, it's where we can gain an advantage as an engaged manager. Okay, so next up we got Jean-Philippe Mateta of Crystal Palace. Last season in spells, he was absolutely unplayable. Ended up getting 14 goals and 2 assists, last season, which isn't bad at all. Was relatively in line with performances of his XG and XA metrics, and was involved in a fair few big chances as well. I think he's a good option, but I also do think that at 7.5 million, there are more appealing options as well. So again, I don't think it's a bad option. It is a little bit of a tougher start to the season for Crystal Palace, but I do think that they can score against Chelsea and they can score against Aston Villa as well in those first three. I don't mind him at all, Josh. What do you make of him?
Yeah, I quite like him, to be fair. Obviously, the ticker doesn't look nice on the face of it, but for me, Palace are a good attack, and Aston Villa away is not a red fixture from an attack point of view, in my opinion. We all know my feelings on Aston Villa defence. But yeah, I think a lot of people will be going into Game Week 1 with Chelsea defence. I think that's not a bad thing by all means. Obviously, their fixtures long term are good, but I would not bank on a clean sheet for Chelsea in Game Week 1. Palace have proven that they can beat almost anyone really, with their really strong attack. And obviously, if Eze stays, that does make Mateta just as good of an option. So yeah, for me, I think he's a decent pick, and obviously he's been banging form in pre-season, scoring goals, so that's always a good sign, like we mentioned with Ollie Watkins. Okay, then to another 7.5 million midfield, not even midfielder, it's a forward. Let me start again. To another 7.5 million forward, it is Chris Wood of Nottingham Forest. So going from a guy who's been banging them in pre-season to a guy whose team has failed to score a lot in pre-season. Forest have looked pretty poor going forward so far. Obviously, it is pre-season, so you can take it with a pinch of salt, but it doesn't usually give you the most confidence going into the season when you're not scoring too many goals. To caveat that, though, obviously Nottingham Forest fixture run to start the season is really nice. Brentford at home, Palace away, and West Ham at home. For an opening three is pretty kind. Obviously, we're yet to sort of understand what this Brentford team looks like under Keith Andrews, so it'll be an interesting one to watch. Obviously, Igor Jesus as well has signed for Nottingham Forest, and we've seen him playing up top with Chris Wood. It could be a question mark to his minutes more longer term, but I think for the start of the season, he's absolutely fine to be picked, and that's what 16% of managers think so as well. Ben, what's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, a little bit of worry that Forest haven't scored in pre-season, but I do think they will start the season solid. I guess one thing to note really is the European commitments when they do come in. That's going to have an effect as well. So yeah, I think Chris Wood is not a bad option. He will still score goals. It probably quite won't be as much of an overperformance as last season, but yeah, I think not a bad option because of that decent fixture run at the start. Okay, so next up we've got Dominic Solanke, and on the face of it, looks to be a really good pick with some nice fixtures early on. However, the one thing to note really and to keep an eye on is his availability during pre-season. He looks to have picked up a little bit of a knock in pre-season, so he hasn't featured as much as we thought he would. So it does run a little bit of a risk going into this season. We'll have to keep an eye on Thomas Frank's press conferences and updates ahead of Game Week 1, because if he is in line to start in Game Week 1, then he becomes a very, very appealing option, because of course he could be on penalties for Spurs with Heung-min Son leaving. Josh, what do you make of Solanke? Is he an option if fit and available?
Yeah, I think if he was fit and available, a lot of more managers would be owning him going into Game Week 1. Burnley at home is a lovely fixture with how many players have sort of left Burnley from that great defensive record. It's important to point out as well with Burnley that Leeds actually had a better expected goals conceded record than them last season. So, there was definite overperformance in that defence, and the fact that they've lost a lot of them doesn't bode well.
Yeah,
Obviously,
three out of
Solanke.
the back four.
Yeah, exactly, and the goalkeeper. So yeah, it's not ideal from a Burnley point of view, and obviously with Solanke now probably having penalties, we don't know that for certain yet. I think it's a really, really nice option going into Game Week 1. Obviously, Spurs' record against City is pretty decent as well, so City away, I wouldn't even be too put off starting him in. And then Bournemouth at home as well. Again, lost a lot of their defenders so far. In the summer series, they've looked a bit ropey back there. So will that continue into the Premier League? We're going to have to wait and see. Okay, then, so dropping down from the 7.5 to 7 million, and he's sort of on his own. Evan Nilsson of Bournemouth, obviously a good sort of debut season in the Premier League, 15 attacking returns in just over 2,000 minutes, which I think's very, very good considering a lot of people thought that Solanke would be a big miss for Bournemouth. Obviously, Liverpool away is not an ideal start. It would not shock me though if Bournemouth went there and scored. They are that kind of team under Iraola. They shocked a lot of teams last season, especially away from home as well. Wolves at home, Game Week 2 is a lovely fixture, and then sort of from then on for the next 5 to 8 game weeks, Bournemouth have really nice long-term fixtures. So potentially he's one maybe to consider for the bench on Game Week 1, but I'd actually be happy starting him away at Liverpool if you didn't feel like you wanted any of the options sort of around that price point. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
Yeah, I think he's a really good option. He's one that's currently on my bench at the moment in my team, and I do think he will provide good value this season, especially if Cliver continues to miss the start of the season. Again, means he's going to be on penalties, which is only another benefit to add on. Maybe sort of somewhat limited minutes last season just because of a couple of injuries, but to still have 10 goals, 5 assists, and 25 big chance involvements in the minutes that he played was pretty good to end last season. So expecting sort of a continuation of that going into this. Okay, so next up we're going to go to Danny Wellbeck of Brighton, and again sort of hold him in a similar sort of stance really to Evan Nielsen. He should be the starting number 9 with Xiao Pedro gone now and leading the line. Should be the guy that's going to be on penalties for Brighton as well. And in terms of the minutes last season, again, a similar number of minutes, a similar number of goals and assists. So these two are both good options and definitely ones to consider there. Brighton's fixtures aren't the worst either. So for Danny Welbeck to be at 6.5 million, potentially being the starting striker for Brighton, could be potentially a bit of a bargain. Of course, I think with Brighton in pre-season, we've seen a lot of different structures and a lot of different strikers up top. We've seen Jorginho go up there. So there is maybe an element of risk of rotation just based on that. But I do think we see Welbeck as the starting number 9, at least to start the season. Josh, what do you think of Danny Welbeck?
Yeah, he's in my draft at the minute. I think I'd probably pay up to 7.5 million for him, to be honest, if he's starting number 9 for Brighton. Like you say, he's on penalties. He takes direct free kicks as well, so his routes to points are really good. Minutes wise, last season was pretty good from Danny Welbeck standard. You know, he's very injury prone, which is obviously something to be aware of. He won't play every single game, but yeah, for the start of the season, even if he just plays the first two, I'd be more than happy to take a punt on him. Next up, then, we've got Jorgen Strandlund from Wolves. Again, another very good season last season with the 14 goals and 4 assists for Wolves. Obviously, you know Cunha for Wolves, which is going to be interesting because they have recruited in that position sort of 2 players in Fer Lopez as well as John Arias. So hopefully they can provide the assist that Cunha did for Strand Larsen going forwards. Obviously, I think Strand Larsen would be a lot higher owned if he didn't have Man City at home on the opening weekend. Just under 6% owned. 6.5 million though. When you look at his data and stats compared to the likes of Evan Nilsson and Danny Welbeck, I think again could be slightly underpriced. And definitely from game week 2 and onwards, you could look at him maybe like what Ben's doing with Evan Nilsson, potentially bench him for game week 1 and then proceed from there. Should be on penalties as well now, obviously with Cunha gone, which is a really, really big benefit. Again, 6.5 million forwards on penalties. This is, you know, gold dust when you're considering the prices you're having to pay for the likes of Jared Bowen, who probably doesn't even have penalties if Paqueta's on the pitch. So, yeah, for me, a really, really nice option. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
Yeah, definitely a decent option. I do worry a little bit about how Wolves are going to perform as a whole team this year, which is maybe the one thing sort of putting me off Strand Larsen. It's one of those, it'll be more of a risk to invest in him because of Wolves than because of the quality of the player. So yeah, I don't mind it. And again, another player who 2,500 minutes, around 20 goal contributions. I don't think you can go too wrong with it. And sort of sits in the same bracket as we did with Welbeck and Evan Nilsson. Okay, so next up we've got Igor Thiago from Brentford. Now, of course, we expect him to now be the starting striker for Brentford going into this season. And Burmo obviously left to Manchester United. Visser seemingly on his way out as well at the time of recording. This could be a really decent differential. The fixtures aren't too bad to start the season. The only thing that I would say about that is there's not too much we know about how Brentford are going to perform this season, just given the sheer number of changes that we've seen in management and players over the summer. Josh, would you say there is an element of risk with it, or do you think at 6 million the price tag sort of negates that a little bit?
I think it's a huge risk, to be honest, at 6 million. When you can get the likes of Welbeck and Strand Larsen, who are proven Premier League strikers, for zero point 0.5 more, I think it's well worth taking it up. The fixture run isn't ideal. Forest away is tough from an attacking point of view. Villa at home, again, you know, it's not the worst, but I think it's that Sunderland fixture that a lot will be looking him for. But when you just look at the data on the right, he's played less than 290 minutes in the Premier League. So for me, he's definitely a wait and see option. I know a lot of people in the community are keen on him. I think it's mainly a price point thing than anything else. But yeah, for me, I would probably avoid him if I'm being honest to start the season. Okay, then, so the final striker on today's video is going to be Beto at 5.5 million. He's obviously 0.5 cheaper than Barry at Everton, their new record signing up front. But we do think that he should be starting the season at least as their main striker. That's what we saw in the summer series for Everton, and he did quite well, to be fair to him. He's sticking around. I think it will be an interesting battle between the both of them. I think that's the main caveat though with Beto, is that he's going to have to fight for his minutes this season. I think you will see a game week 1 start against Leeds, but it's similar to that Xiao Pedro situation where, say, by 50-60 minutes he hasn't done much and hasn't returned just yet. I think we will see those subs around that sort of time, if Everton want to sort of change it up and go with Barry up top. Both of them are quite similar in their play style, big target men, so it's not as if it's a change of system will sort of benefit either or. So it's sort of a plug and play type job between the both of them. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Obviously he's 14% owned, but that's probably just down to the price, right?
Yeah, probably just down to the price. And even at 5.5 million, I think managers who are sort of going for him have maybe run out of money and still need a starting striker. I probably wouldn't go there myself. Haven't really considered him just because of the risk to his minutes with Everton and with Barry coming in. there's a element of risk there associated with that, and could be a transfer waiting to happen. But I do agree. I think he will at least start in game week 1.
Okay, then, so that wraps up the best forwards to buy in FPL this season. Obviously, we're just over a week away from that game week 1 deadline, so make sure you get in your comments what your forward line is looking like right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the FPL Graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
next time. Have a good preseason, everyone.
But I'm not going down with you. So you may rise, but you'll never make me wanna stick around you.